Section 98 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 31. The Empyrean, God, the Angels and the Blessed, Saint Bernard, Dante's last words with Beatrice, the glory of Mary.
In semblance, therefore, of a pure white rose, the sacred soldiery with which his blood Christ made his bride, revealed itself to me. Meanwhile the other host, which flying sees the glory of him who wins its love, and sings the goodness which had made them all so great, was like a swarm of bees, which now enflowers itself, and now returns to where its toil is sweetened, ever coming down to enter the spacious flower, which with so many leaves adorns itself, and reascending thence to where its love for ever makes his home. The faces of them all were living flames, their wings were golden, and the rest so white, that never is such whiteness reached by snow. When down into the flower they came, they spread from bench to bench the peace and ardent love, which by the fanning of their sides they won. Nor did so vast a host of flying forms between the flower and that which o'er it lies, hinder the sight, or dim the splendour seen. Because the light divine so penetrates the universe, according to its worth, that naught can be an obstacle thereto. And this secure and joyous kingdom, thronged by people of the ages old and new, wholly on one mark set its looks and love. O trinal light, that in a single star sparkling before their eyes dost so appease them, look down upon our tempest here below. If the barbarians, coming from a region above which Elice looms every day, while circling with the sun who is her joy, on seeing Rome and all her lofty buildings, what time the Lateran rose eminent o'er every mortal thing, were wonder-struck, how overwhelmed with awe must I have been, I, who from human things to things divine, from time into eternity had come, from Florence, to a people just and sane. Because of this indeed, and of my joy, it pleased me to be mute and hear no sound. And even as in the temple of his vow, when hoping to describe it all some day, a pilgrim looks around him and is cheered, even so, while wandering through the living light, I turned mine eyes on all the graded ranks, circling now up, now down, and now around. There love-persuasive faces I beheld, decked by another's light and their own smiles, and gestures fraught with grace and dignity. My look now as a whole had comprehended the general form of Paradise, but had not yet settled especially on any part. And I was longing with rekindled wish to ask my lady as to many things concerning which my mind was in suspense, though one thing I had meant, another answered. Thinking to look at Beatrice, an elder I saw arrayed, as are the glorious folk. His eyes and cheeks were all suffused with joy and kindliness, and such his pious mien, as fitting is a father's tenderness. Hence, where is she? I said impulsively, and he,
To bring thy longing to an end was I by Beatrice from mine own place withdrawn. And if upon the highest rank's third round thou look, thou shalt again behold her enthroned where her deserts allotted her.
Without reply I lifted up mine eyes, and saw her, as reflecting from herself the eternal rays, she made herself a crown. Not from the tract whence highest thunder's peal is any mortal eye so far removed from whatsoever sea it fathoms most, as Beatrice was distant from mine eyes. But naught was that to me, because her face came down to me unblurred by aught between. O Lady, thou in whom my hope is strong, and who for my salvation didst endure to leave the traces of thy feet in hell, I recognize the virtue and the grace of all the many things which I have seen, as coming from thy power and kindliness. From slavery to freedom thou hast drawn me in every way, and over every path, within thy power to achieve that end. Guard thou in me the fruitage of thy bounty, that thus my soul, restored to health by thee, may, when it leaves my body, please thee still. I thus implored, and she, though so far off she seemed, looked down at me and smiled. Then to the eternal fount she turned again. Thereat the holy elder said,
That thou mayst bring thy journey to its perfect end, for which both prayers and holy love have sent me, hover about this garden with thine eyes, for to have seen it will prepare thy look to rise still higher through the ray divine. the Queen of Heaven, for whom I wholly burn with love, will grant us this and very grace, for I her faithful servant Bernard am.
As he who from Croatia comes, perchance, to look at our Veronica, and who, because of its old fame, is never sated, but says in thought, as long as it is shown, My Lord, Christ Jesus, God in very truth, was then your countenance like unto this? Even such was I, as on the living love I gazed on him, who in this world received a taste in contemplation of that peace.
This glad existence, Son of Grace,
He then began,
will not be known to thee, if fixed at this low level only are thine eyes. Look at the circles, to the most remote, till yonder thou behold that Queen enthroned, to whom devoutly subject is this realm.
I raised mine eyes, and as at early morn the horizon's eastern parts excel in light the regions where the sun is setting, so, as with mine eyes from vale to mount I moved, I saw a region at the utmost verge vanquish in light all other parts before me. And as the skies, where one awaits the car which Phaeton badly drove, more brightly gleam, while pale the light on either side becomes, so likewise brilliant in the middle loomed that peaceful oriflamme, and on each side the fire in equal measure burned less bright. And clustered there with wings outspread I saw more than 1,000 angels jubilant, and each distinct in splendour and in speed, while smiling down upon their sports and songs a beauty I beheld, who was the joy within the eyes of all the other saints. And even if I in utterance were as rich as in imagination, I'd not dare attempt to tell the least of its delight. When Bernard saw mine eyes intently fixed upon the object of his ardent love, he turned to it his own with such affection, that mine more eager grew to look again.
End of Paradiso, Canto 31. Section 99 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 32. The Empyrean, God. The Angels and the Blessed. The Order of the Rose. The Blessed Children. The Great Patricians.
Intent on his delight, that contemplator the office of a teacher took unasked, and thereupon began these holy words.
The one so beautiful at Mary's feet is she who opened and who made the wound, which Mary closed again, and then anointed. In the order which up there the third seats make, Rachel beneath her sits with Beatrice, as thou perceivest, Sarah, Rebecca, Judith, and she who was that singer's ancestress, who said when he was grieving for his sin, Have mercy on me. Thou canst thus behold downward from rank to rank, as each I name, and through the rows decline from leaf to leaf. Descending from the seventh row of seats, even as above it, Hebrew women follow, dividing all the tresses of the flower. For in accordance with the attitude their faith assumed toward Christ, these women form the wall which separates the sacred steps. On this side, where full-bloomed the flower is, complete with all its leaves, are seated those who in the Christ that was to come believed, and on the other, where the semicircles are interrupted by still vacant seats, are those who face toward Christ already come. And as on this side here the glorious throne of heaven's own Lady, and the other seats beneath it such a great partition make, so opposite the seat of that great John, who, ever holy, underwent the desert and martyrdom, and then 2 years in Hades, while Francis, Benedict, and Augustine beneath him were decreed to form the line with others down to here, from round to round. And now behold how great God's foresight is, for each of these 2 aspects of the faith will fill this garden to the same extent. And know that downward from the row of seats which midway separates the 2 divisions, no one is seated for his own deserts, but for another's, under fixed conditions. For all of these are spirits who were freed before they had the power to really choose. This by their faces thou canst well perceive, and by their childish voices furthermore, if, looking at them well, thou listen too. Thou doubtest now, and doubting thou art silent, but I will set thee free from that strong bond wherein thy subtle thoughts are holding thee. Within the ample nature of this realm, nothing can any more occur by chance, than either sadness, thirst, or hunger can. For in accordance with eternal law is settled all thou seest, so that here close fitting to the finger is the ring. These people, therefore, who before their time have reached true life, are not without good cause more excellent or less among themselves. The king, through whom this kingdom finds repose in such delight and love, that no one's will is bold enough to long for any greater, creating all minds in his own glad sight, as him it pleases, dowers each with grace in divers ways. Here let the fact suffice. And this is clearly and expressly marked for you in Holy Scripture, by those twins who, in their mother, had their wrath aroused. According to the color of the hair of that grace, therefore, must the light supreme be worthily accorded as a crown. Without deserving aught, then, for their deeds, are these to different grades assigned, which differ in their innate keen-sightedness alone. The faith of parents only was, indeed, with innocence, enough for their salvation throughout the centuries of early times. Then, when the primal ages had elapsed, males were by circumcision forced to win the virtue needed by their guileless wings. But later, when the age of grace had come, without the perfect baptism in the Christ, such innocence was there below retained. But now look at the face which to the Christ is most resemblant, for its light alone can make thee ready to behold the Christ.
I saw such gladness raining down on her, borne by those holy minds, created such that they might fly across those altitudes, that whatsoever I had seen before ne'er held me with such admiration poised, nor showed me such resemblance unto God, and that same love which first descended there. Singing, spread out his open wings in front of her. And on all sides the beatific court made such an answer to the song divine, that every face became the more serene. O Holy Father, who for me dost bear to be down here, and leave the pleasant place, where by eternal lot thou hast thy seat, who is that angel who with such delight is at our Queen's eyes gazing, and is so enamoured that he seems to be on fire? For teaching I had thus recourse again to him who was from Mary drawing beauty, as from the sun the early morning star, and he to me,
As much self-trust and grace as can be in an angel or a soul are all in him, and we would have it so, for he it was who carried down the palm to Mary, when God's Son upon himself was pleased to take the burden of our flesh. But with thine eyes now follow after me, as I keep speaking, and note the great patricians of this most just and kind imperial state. The two that have the happiest seats up there, because the nearest to Augustus' throne, are, as it were, the two roots of this rose. He that upon the left is at her side, that father is, because of whose bold taste the human species tastes such bitterness. And on her right thou seest that ancient father of Holy Church, to whom Christ gave in trust the keys of this fair flower. And he who saw, ere dying, all that fair bride's troubled days, who with the spear and with the nails was won, beside him sits. And at the other side that leader rests, neath whom the ingrate folk, stiff-necked and fickle-minded, lived on manna. Anna thou seest sitting opposite to Peter, so content to see her daughter, that never from her doth she move her eyes, although Hosanna singing. Or 'gainst the oldest father of a family Lucia sits, who had thy lady go, when thou thy brows in downward flight didst turn. But since apace thy slumber time is fleeing, here will we pause, as that good tailor does, who cuts his gown according to his cloth, and toward the primal love direct our eyes, that, looking toward him, thou mayst penetrate as far into his splendor as thou canst. But lest perchance by moving thine own wings thou shouldst recede, believing to advance, grace needs must be obtained for thee by prayer, grace from the one who hath the power to help thee. Hence follow after me with thine affection, that from my words thy heart turn not aside.
He then began the following holy prayer.
End of Paradiso, Canto 32. Section 100 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 33. The Empyrean. God. St. Bernard's Prayer to Mary. The Vision of God. Ultimate Salvation.
O Virgin Mother, daughter of thy Son, humbler and loftier than any creature, eternal counsel's predetermined goal, thou art the one that such nobility didst lend to human nature, that its Maker scorned not to make himself what he had made. Within thy womb rekindled was the love, through whose warm influence in the eternal peace this flower hath blossomed thus. Here unto us thou art a noonday torch of charity, and down below 'mong mortal men thou art a living fount of hope. Lady, so great thou art, and hast such worth, that one who longs for grace, and unto thee hath not recourse, wingless would wish to have his longing fly. Not only doth thy kindliness give help to him that asketh it, but many times it freely runs ahead of his request. In thee is mercy, pity is in thee magnificence, and all there is of goodness in a creature meets in thee. Now doth this man, who from the lowest drain of the universe hath one by one beheld, as far as here, the forms of spirit life, beseech thee of thy grace for so much strength that with his eyes he may uplift himself toward ultimate salvation higher still. And I, who never for mine own sight burned more than I do for his, offer thee all my prayers, and pray that they be not too poor, that thou with thy prayers so dissolve each cloud of his mortality, that unto him the highest pleasure may unfold itself. And furthermore I pray to thee, O Queen, who canst whate'er thou wilt, that after such a sight thou keep all his affections sound. His human promptings let thy care defeat. See with how many blessed ones Beatrice is clasping for my prayers her hands to thee.
The eyes beloved and revered by God, intent on him who prayed, revealed to us how grateful unto her our earnest prayers. Thence they addressed them to the eternal light, wherein it may not be believed the eye of any creature finds so clear a way. And I, who to the end of all desires was drawing near, within me, as I ought, brought to its goal the ardour of desire. Bernard was smiling, and was making signs for me to look on high, but as he wished, I was already of mine own accord, because my sight, as purer it became, was penetrating more and more the radiance of that high light, which of itself is true. From this time onward greater was my sight than is our speech, which yields to such a vision, and memory also yields to such excess. And such as he who seeth in a dream, and after it the imprinted feeling stays, while all the rest returns not to his mind, even such am I. For almost wholly fades my vision, yet the sweetness which was born of it is dripping still into my heart. Even thus the snow is in the sun dissolved, even thus the Sibyl's oracles, inscribed on flying leaves, were lost adown the wind. O light supreme, that dost uplift thyself so far from mortal thought, relend my mind a little of what thou didst seem to be, and cause my tongue to be so powerful, that of thy glory it may leave at least a spark unto the people still to come. For to my memory if it but a while return, and speak a little in these lines, more of thy victory will be conceived. I think the keenness of the living ray which I endured would have confounded me, if from it I had turned away mine eyes. And I recall that I, because of this, the bolder was to bear it, till I made my vision one with value infinite. O the abundant grace whereby I dared to pierce the light eternal with my gaze, until I had therein exhausted sight. I saw that far within its depths there lies, by love together in one volume bound, that which in leaves lies scattered through the world. Substance and accident, and modes thereof, fused as it were in such a way that whereof I speak is but one simple light. This union's general form I think I saw, since, saying so, I feel that I the more rejoice. Of more forgetfulness for me one moment is, than centuries 25 are for the enterprise which once caused Neptune to wonder at the shadow Argo cast. My mind, thus wholly in suspense, was gazing steadfast and motionless, and all intent, and gazing grew enkindled more and more. Such in that light doth one at last become, that one can never possibly consent to turn therefrom for any other sight; because the good, which is the will's real object, is therein wholly gathered, and, outside, that is defective which is perfect there. Even as to what I do remember, mine will now be shorter than an infant's speech, who at the breast still bathes his tongue. 'Twas not that there was other than a simple semblance within the living light wherein I gazed, which always is what it hath been before. But through my sight, which in me, as I looked, was gathering strength, because I changed, one sole appearance underwent a change for me. Within the lofty light's profound and clear subsistence there appeared to me 3 rings, of threefold colour and of one content; and one, as rainbow is by rainbow, seemed reflected by the other, while the third seemed like a fire breathed equally from both. O how to my conception short and weak is speech! And this, to what I saw, is such, that it is not enough to call it small. O light eternal, that alone dost dwell within thyself, alone dost understand thyself, and love and smile upon thyself, self-understanding and self-understood. That circle which appeared to be conceived within thyself as a reflected light, when somewhat contemplated by mine eyes, within itself, of its own very colour, to me seemed painted with our human form, whence wholly set upon it was my gaze. Like the geometer who gives himself wholly to measuring the circle, nor by thinking finds the principle he needs, even such was I at that new sight. I wished to see how to the ring the image there conformed itself, and found therein a place. But mine own wings were not enough for this. Had not my mind been smitten by a flash of light, wherein what it was willing came. Here power failed my high imagining, but like a smoothly moving wheel, that love was now resolving my desire and will, which moves the sun and all the other stars.
End of Paradiso, Canto 33. End of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon.